Hodor. Hold the door. Ever since the twist of Episode 5, Season 6, the entire timeline of Game of Thrones has been called into question. How did Bran create this time loop? Was it destined to happen, or did Bran make it happen? Was things always meant to be this way, or can Bran manipulate the past? These questions have led many readers to believe that the whole story of Song of Ice and Fire and of Game of Thrones is actually one big lead up to a huge circular time loop that Bran created way back in the day, as he is connected to every Brandon Stark that has ever existed since the end of the previous Long Night, and how everything he has done and everything that we have seen happen on Game of Thrones had to happen to prevent the second Long Night. This is One Bran is Them All. Hey, it's Schema K. So the basic breakdown of this theory is that the Bran that we know and love from the show, somehow later on the show, goes into his walking state and time travels in between the different timelines of every single Brandon Stark, from the Age of Heroes to now. In doing this, he controls, lives, or influences their lives in such a way that he makes certain events happen, from him falling from that tower, Robert's rebellion, the death of Lyanna, Rhaegar, everything that Littlefinger did, and so much more, all in the hope to prevent another long night. Crazy, right? Perhaps not. If we didn't already have a huge amount of evidence pointing to at least someone manipulating or changing the timeline or people's opinions with their warging abilities of some kind, then this theory wouldn't even last a tiny bit. But with Bloodraven and prophecies, crazy dreams, and R'hllor, there is clearly someone, or lots of people, trying to influence the world using these magical warging and dream-inducing states. So what evidence is there that Bran is the one who is doing this, and he's using the other Brandons throughout history as his vehicle to do this? Now the first Brandon we know has some kind of connection to Bran, because we've seen the parallel between their two lives and situations a lot in tons of different theories, is Bran the Builder. Now from some of the lore videos we get from Game of Thrones and images and artworks we've seen of Bran the Builder, we can tell that Bran the Builder is crippled like Bran. Plus, they both share a pretty powerful warging ability. It's claimed that he built the wall, which is one big feat, and now that we're understanding Bran's abilities more, probably not something that it's going to be too far out of his reach by the time he gets to a certain age. Okay, so that's only one Brandon, like a lot of people have claimed to draw this parallel between the different Brandons, but this theory claims that all the Brandon Starks have been somewhat influenced or completely controlled by Bran. So what other Brandons are there that we could see from our history that we know about he could have influenced? How about Ned's brother, the one who was originally supposed to marry Catelyn Tully? So what actions of Brandon's could Bran control that would make huge altering differences in the timeline? What actions have he made that really shifted someone's entire perspective on life and motivations with one single stroke? How about Littlefinger? Littlefinger loved Catelyn more than anyone else in the world, and ever since a child he was constantly after her. It came to a head when he challenged Brandon, who Catelyn was betrothed to a duel, and lost terribly, and Brandon cut him right down the center of his stomach, only just a little bit though to give him a nice scar, and then Catelyn had to beg for him to stop. Littlefinger himself declaims that this moment was the biggest motivation for him starting all his plans and being a player in the Game of Thrones. And man, it made a world of difference. Littlefinger manipulated so many things. He killed Jon Arryn, he influenced Lysa, he put the Vale out of the war, he inflamed the conflict between the Lannisters and the Starks. He did so much to change the realm, and all of that could have been started by Bran through Brandon. And that wasn't the only thing Bran could have influenced of Brandon. Remember the whole Mad King instance and the whole Robert Rebellion thing? It was a small minor detail in the history. That all started with Brandon Stark rushing down to King's Landing and demanding from a half-crazed king that his son, be taken into custody and tried for the crime of kidnapping Lyanna. This led to his capture, his father coming down, and both of them dying, igniting the war that took down the Targaryen dynasty. Now, I've seen some people who talk about this theory also discuss a lot of the other people who seem to be influenced by Bran as well, people like Rhaegar, and how he just one day decided that he had to become a knight, he had to learn to fight, he had to learn to do tourney, or so he can impress Lyanna one day, take her away and marry her, which could be seen as a very big influence on everything that happened, mainly because that was one of the big reasons the war started as well. But even with just the 2 big impacts that Brandon made, we can already see how all the follow-up from the war, Robert's rebellion, and everything led to everything we know in the show so far, and how that could possibly lead to Bran saving the world from another long night. So if Bran was actually traveling from these different timelines and interacting with all these different Brandons, you think maybe someone might have noticed, Maybe Bran could have confided into someone like Lyanna or Rhaegar, or maybe someone who is really old, has been with many different Brandons, and has understand the trends and seen these connections between them, would understand that they're all the same person. Do we know any people who are old and connected to the Starks for a very long time and help raise and look after the children? That's right, Old Nan. For those who study the books and show, Old Nan is a fascinating character with so much to her. But one of the most important quotes I believe she has is this: Bran knew the story, but it was never his favorite. Maybe one of the other Brandons had liked that story. Sometimes Old Nan would talk to him like he was her Brandon, the baby she had nursed all those years ago. And sometimes she confused him with his uncle Brandon, who was killed by the Mad King before Bran was even born. She had lived so long, Mother had once told him, that all the Brandon Starks became one person in her head. Now this could mean that she's just an old woman and she gets people confused in their old Alzheimer-filled memory, but it also could be a very good hint that Bran is not how he seems, and that his character has been going through the timeline back through the Brans to create certain events, and she's noticed him, or at least she feels it in him. But why would he do this? How would it stop the long night? And why would George R. R. Martin make this his ending? One quote that comes to mind when thinking about this is the heartwarming quote from Ramsay Bolton: "If you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention." George R. R. Martin has said for a long time that his ending is going to be bittersweet. There's going to be immense tragedy, but in the end, a hopeful ending and a brand new world for the characters that remain. Many people have theorized Dany will die, or Jon will die, or all these other things that will be the tragedy, the bitter part of the sweet ending. But I think the most bittersweet, perfect way to conclude the series would be an almost montage-like time withdrawal, as we see Bran make and forge every event that has scarred us from the beginning till now. We watch Ned die and realize that it had to happen. We watch Robb be shot down with arrows and realize that had to happen. We watch everything from Tyrion to Rhaegar, Robert's rebellion, everything happen that's so tragic to save mankind. That tastes very bitter with that sweet. Thanks for watching. There is tons of holes with the theory. One thing that I saw a lot of people brought up in the small discussion on Reddit about this was how the connection between the Bran the Builder and the Bran we know in the series of them being crippled could be kind of like the way we see people who are blind and deaf or disabilitied in some way enhance their other skills to make up for that lack of a sense. And it's kind of the same way with Bran. He lost his abilities to his legs, but now he can fly. Now he can open up his third eye. Now he can walk, so much more. But tell me what you guys think about this theory and anything like that in the comment section below. I really enjoy reading your guys' thoughts.
Hey, it's King McKay.